The massive council chamber aboard Nexus Prime hummed with the energy of a dozen different alien technologies. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their specialized environmental pods, each one designed for their particular species' needs. The hegemony delegates breathed methane through their breathing tubes. The crystal beings from Altair sparkled under the artificial sunlight created just for them. The floating jellyfish-like Etherians drifted in their water-filled spheres. Ambassador Zethkalar stood at the center of the Great Hall. His forearms gestured dramatically as holographic displays showed military data above his scaled head. The tall reptilian being had called this emergency meeting, and every representative knew it meant trouble somewhere in the galaxy. "Fellow council members," Zethkalar began, his voice translator converting his hissing speech into words each species could understand. "We face an unprecedented situation. The humans are planning something incredibly foolish." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The humans were still new to galactic politics, having joined the community only 50 years ago. Most species viewed them as primitive but determined creatures who made up for their lack of advanced technology with stubborn persistence. "Show them the target," commanded Vexandra, the Altarian War Master. Her crystalline form chimed like wind chimes as she spoke. The holographic display changed to show a planet. Kepler 442b hung in space like a metal fortress. Its surface was covered with defensive installations that gleamed under its star's light. Massive shield generators created a shimmering barrier around the entire world. "The Vorthan Fortress world," Zethkalar announced. 3,000 years it has stood unconquered. 17 major invasions have tried and failed to breach its defenses. The humans believe they can succeed where others have failed. Laughter filled the chamber. The sound came in many forms: chirps, hisses, electronic beeps, and musical notes. Each species expressed amusement in their own way, but the message was clear. The idea of humans conquering the most defended world in the galaxy seemed absurd. "How many ships do they have?" asked Morgan, speaking through his artificial voice box. The elderly being had lost his natural voice in the last war against the machines. 12 vessels, Zethkalar replied. 1 dreadnought, 6 cruisers, and 5 support ships. More laughter echoed through the chamber. The Altarian War Master's crystal body flashed bright blue with amusement. The last serious attempt used 300 warships and still failed after 6 months of fighting. Zethkalar nodded his massive head. "The humans have requested no assistance. They claim they will complete the operation in what they call quick time. Our analysts believe this means they expect to succeed within several days." "Several days?" The Etherian combat specialist's tentacles writhed in what passed for disbelief among her species. The outer defensive ring alone took the Corvin fleet 18 days to penetrate, and they had 4 times as many ships. The ambassador activated another display. Numbers and graphs appeared in the air, showing detailed calculations. "Our best military computers have run simulations. Even with perfect conditions and assuming the humans fight with their typical reckless determination, they would need a minimum of 47 hours to breach the outer shields. That assumes they can breach them at all," added the Altarian War Master. "The quantum barriers require specific harmonic frequencies to disrupt. The humans lack the technology to generate such precise energy patterns." Zethkalar's tail swished with what his species considered satisfaction. "Precisely. Our full analysis suggests the humans will realize their mistake within the first day. They will withdraw their forces and request mediation to negotiate with the Vorthans." "What do the Vorthans say about this human challenge?" asked a small delegate from one of the rim worlds. "General Karthak considers it an amusing diversion," Zethkalar replied. "He has offered to let the humans land a small force on the surface for what he calls educational purposes. He believes watching humans attempt to storm his fortress will provide entertainment for his troops." The chamber filled with the various sounds of alien approval. Many delegates found the general's attitude appropriately condescending toward the upstart human species. "When does this educational demonstration begin?" inquired Vexandra. "In 72 hours. The human fleet is already moving toward the Kepler system." Zethkalar paused dramatically. "I propose we position observation drones to record the event. It will serve as valuable data about human military capabilities and limitations." "Agreed," came voices from around the chamber. Morgan raised one of his mechanical arms. "Should we prepare rescue ships? Human stubbornness might lead them to take unnecessary casualties before they accept defeat. The Vorthans have agreed to accept surrender at any time." Zethkalar assured him. They find human determination amusing rather than threatening. The Etherian delegate drifted closer to the central display. What exactly do the humans believe they can accomplish? Their public statements have been vague. Their Admiral Chen claims they will demonstrate new tactics that will revolutionize siege warfare, Zethkalar said, his voice making the sound his species used for mockery. She promises the galaxy will see something it has never seen before. New tactics? The crystalline War Master's form shifted to a deeper blue color. Siege warfare has been perfected over millions of years. Every possible approach has been tried and catalogued. The humans have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries.
What could they possibly know that we do not?
Nothing, replied Zethkalar confidently. Human arrogance often exceeds their capabilities. They believe their primitive creativity can overcome superior technology and experience. The delegate from the Rim Worlds leaned forward in his environmental suit. Should we warn them? Explain why their mission will fail? Several representatives made sounds of disagreement. The Altarian War Master spoke for many of them. Let them learn through experience. Humans seem to ignore advice until reality forces them to accept facts. Besides, added the Etherian, watching them fail will provide useful intelligence about their military doctrine and equipment. Zethkalar gestured to close the display. Then we are agreed. Observation drones will monitor the human assault on Kepler 442b. We will document their tactics, measure their capabilities, and record their inevitable withdrawal. How long do you estimate before they retreat? Asked Morgan. The ambassador consulted his datapad. Conservative estimates suggest 6 to 8 hours once they realize the futility of their position. Optimistic projections give them up to 20 hours if they prove particularly stubborn. I wager 12 hours, announced Vexandra. Humans show remarkable persistence when facing impossible odds. Other delegates began placing their own bets. The Etherian guessed 15 hours. Morgan suggested 8. Even the usually serious delegate from the Rim Worlds estimated 10 hours before human pride gave way to common sense. 18 hours, declared Zethkalar. I believe human stubbornness will keep them fighting longer than logic would suggest. As the betting continued, nobody suggested the humans might actually succeed. The idea was simply too absurd to consider. 3,000 years of galactic military history proved that the Vorthon Fortress world could not be conquered quickly. Every species in the galaxy understood this fundamental truth. The council session ended with plans for observing the human demonstration. Representatives returned to their ships feeling entertained by the prospect of watching human ambition meet galactic reality. None of them suspected they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The countdown to the human assault had begun, and the galaxy prepared to watch what they believed would be an expensive lesson in humility. The bridge of the UES Indomitable buzzed with quiet activity. Captain Sarah Chen stood before a massive display showing the Vorthon Fortress world growing larger as her fleet approached. Her crew worked at their stations with the focused intensity that had become the hallmark of human military operations. 3 hours until we reach optimal position, reported Lieutenant Kim from the navigation station. All ships report ready status. Chen nodded without taking her eyes off the display. The planet ahead looked exactly like what it was, an impregnable fortress. Every surface bristled with weapons. Energy shields shimmered around the entire world like a soap bubble made of pure force. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Galactic Council, announced Communications Officer Torres. They're requesting permission to position observation drones. Tell them they can watch from a safe distance, Chen replied. But make sure they understand our operational area extends 50,000 kilometers from the planet. She turned away from the display and walked toward the briefing room. Commander Martinez, begin final preparations. All senior staff to the briefing room in 10 minutes. The briefing room filled quickly with humans and their alien allies. Commander Martinez took his place beside Captain Chen as the last officers entered. The room contained an unusual mix of species working together, something that still surprised many galactic observers. People, we've trained for this moment for 6 months, Chen began, activating a holographic display of the fortress world. Every simulation, every drill, every sleepless night has led to this operation. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Torres, leader of the assault team, stood up. His scarred face bore evidence of a dozen battles across human space. "Ma'am, the men are ready. Drop pods are loaded and sealed. All equipment checks are complete." "Good. Let's review the plan one more time." The display zoomed in to show the planet's defensive systems. The Vorthan fortress has exactly one weakness. Every 73 minutes, the quantum shields undergo automatic maintenance. For precisely 0.3 seconds, the harmonic frequency drops by 12%. The room remained silent. Everyone knew that 0.3 of a second was an impossibly small window of opportunity. During that gap, our experimental phase shift drop pods can penetrate the shield barrier, Chen continued. But timing must be perfect. 1 second too early or too late, and the pods will be destroyed instantly. Dr. Elizabeth Park, the fleet's science officer, activated her own display. The reality bombs are ready. Each device will create localized space-time distortions lasting approximately 4 minutes. During that time, normal physics will be suspended in a 50-meter radius. "That gives us our advantage," explained Torres. "While the Vorthons try to fight using normal tactics, we'll be moving through walls, around corners, and across distances that shouldn't be possible." Chen looked around the room at the faces of her crew. Humans, Corvins, even 2 defected Vorthan engineers who had provided the crucial intelligence about the shield harmonics. "Questions?" A young Marine raised her hand. "Captain, what if the timing is off? What if the shields don't drop when we expect?" "Then we improvise," Chen said simply. "That's what humans do best." The Corvin liaison officer clicked his mandibles nervously. "With respect, Captain, improvisation seems insufficient against technology this advanced." Chen smiled, the expression that had made her famous throughout human space. "Commander Klix, you've been working with humans for 2 years now. When have you ever seen us do anything the expected way?" The alien's mandibles clicked again, this time in what passed for laughter among his species. "Never, Captain. But this seems impossible even for humans." "Impossible is just another word for hasn't been tried yet," replied Torres. "Every human child learns that in school." Dr. Park activated another display showing the fortress's internal structure. The Vorthan engineers have provided detailed maps. The central control room is here, 17 levels underground. The shield generators are positioned at these 6 points around the planet. Teams Alpha through Delta will hit the generators simultaneously. Torres explained. Teams Echo and Foxtrot will secure the control room. Each team has memorized 17 different routes through the facility. Once we're inside, electronic communication will be impossible. "How will you coordinate without communication?" asked Klix. Torres grinned. "Hand signals, body language, and good old-fashioned human intuition. We've been practicing subsonic communication techniques that bypass electronic detection." One of the Vorthon defectors spoke up. "The garrison consists of 50,000 elite warriors. They train constantly for invasion scenarios." "They train for conventional invasions," Chen corrected. "Mass landings, siege tactics, prolonged battles. They've never faced an enemy that appears inside their most secure areas without warning. The psychological impact will be significant," added Dr. Park. "Vorthan military doctrine emphasizes defensive superiority. Having enemies materialize in their inner sanctum will create confusion and panic." Chen moved to the front of the room. "People, every major military power in the galaxy is watching this operation. They expect us to fail. They've calculated that we need at least 47 hours to breach the outer defenses, assuming we can manage it at all." She paused, looking at each face in the room. "They're wrong. We're going to complete this mission in under 30 minutes. Gasps filled the room. Even the humans looked shocked by this timeline. 30 minutes? Torres asked. "Ma'am, our most optimistic projections suggested 2 hours. Our projections were based on conventional thinking," Chen replied. "We're not going to fight a conventional battle. We're going to do something so unexpected, so impossible, that their computers won't be able to process what's happening." The Vorthon engineer raised a trembling hand. "Captain, with respect, 30 minutes is not enough time to properly secure a facility this size." "We're not going to secure it," Chen said. "We're going to break it. Fast, decisive, and completely overwhelming. By the time they understand what we're doing, it will be over." The briefing continued for another hour as teams reviewed their specific assignments. Each group had trained for months to execute their part of the plan. The reality bombs would create chaos. The phase shift technology would put human forces where they shouldn't be able to go. And human adaptability would handle everything else. As the meeting ended, Officers filed out to prepare their teams. Torres lingered behind with Captain Chen. "Sarah, are you sure about the 30-minute timeline? Even for us, that seems ambitious." Chen walked back to the display showing the fortress world. "Marcus, every species in the galaxy underestimates humans for the same reason. They think we're limited by logic, aren't we?" She turned to face her old friend. "When has logic ever stopped a human from doing something they believed was necessary?" Torres smiled slowly. "Never, absolutely never, exactly. The Vorthans have built the perfect defense against logical warfare. Unfortunately for them, we gave up on logic the day we decided to leave Earth and explore the stars." The final preparations continued as the human fleet approached its destination. Marines checked equipment one last time. Pilots ran final diagnostics on the experimental drop pods. Engineers made final adjustments to the reality bombs. Throughout the ship, humans prepared to do something the galaxy considered impossible. They were about to prove that the most dangerous enemy of all was one that refused to accept the rules of engagement. At exactly 1437 Galactic Standard Time, the impossible began aboard Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council representatives watched their surveillance screens with the casual interest of scientists observing a predictable experiment. The human fleet hung in space 50,000 kilometers from the Vorten fortress world, apparently hesitating before their doomed assault. "They seem to be reconsidering," observed Ambassador Zeth Kalar with satisfaction. "Perhaps human intelligence exceeds our estimates." The words had barely left his translator when reality twisted. On the fortress world's surface, General Karthak was reviewing defensive positions when his aide rushed into the command center. "Sir, the human ships haven't moved, but our internal sensors are detecting massive energy signatures." "Impossible," Karthak growled. "Nothing can penetrate our shields." Then the alarm started screaming. In the deepest level of the fortress, Sergeant Miller materialized inside a corridor that shouldn't have existed. The reality bomb his team had deployed 3 seconds earlier was still reshaping local space-time. Walls became suggestions rather than barriers. Gravity pointed in whatever direction seemed most convenient. "Teams Alpha and Bravo, sound off," he whispered into his communicator before remembering that electronics wouldn't work inside the distortion field. Hand signals flickered through the twisted space. 12 Marines confirmed their positions using the subsonic communication techniques they'd practiced for months. To any outside observer, they would appear to be moving randomly through solid matter. "Generator 1 is 30 meters that way," Miller indicated with a series of gestures that somehow made perfect sense to his team, despite the warped physics around them. Meanwhile, 2 levels above, Lieutenant Torres found himself standing in what used to be a Vorthon barracks. 50 elite warriors were staring at him in complete shock. According to every law of physics they understood, he couldn't be there. "Sorry for the intrusion," Torres said politely in fluent Vorthon before activating his second reality bomb. The explosion didn't create heat or light. Instead, it made the entire room forget what direction was up. Vorthon soldiers found themselves falling through the ceiling, while Torres stepped sideways through a wall that had become permeable. On Nexus Prime, the surveillance displays showed chaos beyond the Council's comprehension. Figures in human combat armor were appearing and disappearing throughout the fortress like ghosts. The Vorthans were firing weapons at enemies who walked through walls and used gravity as a jungle gym. "Explain this," demanded Vexandra, her crystalline form flashing angry red colors. "I cannot," admitted Zethkalar. "Our sensors show humans inside the fortress, but our other sensors show the shields are still intact." Deep in the fortress's central core, Captain Chen materialized in the main command center alongside 6 of her most experienced officers. General Karthak spun around to face them, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "How did you get here?" he demanded. "We walked," Chen replied simply. "General, I'm offering you one chance to surrender before this gets messy." "You have 6 people," Karthak snarled. "I have 50,000 warriors." "You have 50,000 confused warriors scattered across a fortress that no longer follows the rules of physics," Chen corrected. "My people are systematically dismantling your infrastructure while your soldiers try to figure out why their enemies can move through solid matter." As if to emphasize her point, explosions began echoing through the facility. Not the violent blasts of conventional warfare, but the strange implosions of reality bombs creating zones where cause and effect became optional. Sergeant Miller's team reached Generator 1 just as the Vorthan reinforcements arrived. The defenders took cover behind massive support pillars and opened fire with plasma weapons that should have incinerated anything they touched. Instead, the plasma bolts curved around corners, bounced off surfaces that weren't there, and somehow managed to hit the ceiling above the shooters. Inside the reality distortion field, military tactics became abstract art. Miller's demolitions expert planted charges on the generator while walking upside down on what used to be a wall. The Vorthans tried to stop him but couldn't figure out how to aim at a target that existed in 3 dimensions simultaneously. Fire. In the hole, the expert announced, through hand signals. The generator exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Across the planet, the shield strength dropped by 16%. Similar scenes played out at the other 5 generator sites. Human Marines moved through impossible spaces while Vorthan defenders struggled to fight enemies who treated physics like a mild suggestion. Weapons that should have been devastating became useless against foes who could step sideways out of 3-dimensional space. Lieutenant Torres reached Generator 3 by falling upward through 17 floors while the building tried to decide what direction down meant. The Vorthan guard stationed there watched in horror as he emerged from a wall like water flowing through stone. "Gentlemen," Torres said politely, "I'd step back if I were you." The explosion that followed turned Generator 3 into modern art while somehow leaving everything around it completely undamaged. Reality bombs were very considerate that way. On the Council surveillance screens, the impossible continued. Human soldiers were systematically destroying the most defended fortress in galactic history, while the defenders fired wildly at enemies who existed in spaces between normal dimensions. "How long has this been happening?" asked the Etherian delegate, her tentacles writhing with confusion. 11 minutes, reported the station's computer. 11 minutes. The Council had estimated that breaching the outer defenses alone would take nearly 2 days. General Karthak received reports that made no sense. All 6 shield generators were destroyed. Human forces controlled every major intersection. His warriors were scattered and confused, unable to coordinate against enemies who appeared and disappeared like demons. "Sir, they're requesting your surrender again," his communications officer reported. "I have 50,000 troops," Karthak repeated stubbornly. "Correction," Captain Chen said, stepping through a wall that had become transparent. "You have 50,000 very confused troops who can't figure out how to shoot enemies that phase in and out of normal space." Behind her, Torres and Miller emerged from surfaces that shouldn't have allowed passage. The command center's defenses, designed to stop conventional assault forces, were completely useless against enemies who could ignore basic physics. "This is impossible," Karthak whispered. "That's what everyone keeps saying," Chen replied. "General, your fortress is secure against logical warfare. Unfortunately for you, humans stopped using logic the day we decided that traveling between stars was a good idea." Another reality bomb exploded somewhere in the facility. The explosion was silent but visible as local spacetime folded itself into origami patterns that hurt to look at. 21 minutes, Torres reported. "We're ahead of schedule," Chen nodded. "Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 2. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Zethkalar watched his screens in growing horror. The humans weren't just winning. They were rewriting the fundamental principles of siege warfare. Everything the galaxy knew about military strategy was becoming obsolete in real time. "Get me the Vorthan command frequency," he ordered. Desperately, the transmission connected. Just as General Karthak made his final report to the galaxy, his voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of military tradition crumbling in a single engagement. "This is General Karthak of the Vorthan Fortress Command," he said slowly. "After 23 minutes of combat, I am surrendering my position to human forces." The silence that followed lasted exactly 7 seconds. Then every representative in the council chamber began speaking at once, creating a cacophony of alien languages demanding explanations for the impossible. The humans had just accomplished in 23 minutes what the galaxy's greatest military minds said would take days. They had done it by refusing to acknowledge that it couldn't be done. The age of predictable warfare was over. The silence in the council chamber lasted exactly 19 seconds. Then chaos erupted. "Impossible!" shrieked the Altarian War Master, her crystalline form flashing between angry red and confused purple. "Our calculations were perfect. The fortress cannot be conquered in 23 minutes. Ambassador Zethkalar stood frozen before the surveillance displays, watching human marines casually walking through the captured fortress as if they owned it. Which, technically, they now did. "Get me a direct communication link to the human commander," he ordered, his voice carrying the kind of authority that had once made entire star systems tremble. "I demand an explanation for this statistical impossibility." The main screen flickered to life, showing Captain Chen standing in the Vorthan command center. Behind her, human soldiers worked alongside Vorthan engineers to restore normal physics to the facility. The reality bombs had worn off, leaving behind architecture that would give historians nightmares for decades. "Ambassador Zethkalar," Chen said with the kind of polite smile that humans used when they knew they'd just broken someone's understanding of reality. "I trust you enjoyed the demonstration." "Demonstration?" Zethkalar's forearms gestured wildly. "You have violated every principle of siege warfare. Our computers analyzed this scenario for 3 days and determined it was impossible." "Your computers assumed we would fight a logical war," Chen replied calmly. "That was your first mistake." The Etherian delegate's tentacles writhed with agitation. "Explain how your forces penetrated quantum barriers that have held for 3 millennia. Chen gestured to Dr. Park, who appeared on screen carrying a datapad covered with equations that hurt to look at. "Our science officer can explain the technical details, but it comes down to something very simple. We cheated." "Cheated?" The word rippled through the chamber in a dozen different languages. "We used experimental technology to temporarily suspend the laws of physics in localized areas," Dr. Park explained. "While your defenses were designed to stop conventional attacks, they couldn't account for soldiers who could walk through walls and ignore gravity." The Corvin delegate clicked his mandibles frantically. Such technology would require decades of development. "When did humans master space-time manipulation?" "Last Tuesday," Chen said without blinking. The chamber fell silent again. Several species had to run the translation through their computers multiple times to confirm they'd heard correctly. "Last Tuesday?" Morgan's artificial voice box crackled with static. "You developed reality-altering weapons in 6 days?" "Dr. Park is being modest," Chen continued. "She actually figured out the theoretical framework on Monday. Tuesday was just when we finished building the first prototypes." Dr. Park nodded enthusiastically. "The Vorthan shield technology gave us the inspiration. If you can create stable quantum barriers, you can also destabilize them in very specific ways. We just had to think backwards from their solution." Ambassador Zethkalar felt something he'd never experienced before, the complete collapse of his worldview. "You developed weapons specifically to counter Vorthan defenses in less than a week." "Actually, we developed them to counter any defenses," Torres said, stepping into view. His scarred face bore the satisfied expression of a man who'd just redefined impossible. "The Vorthan fortress was just our first field test. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. If humans could develop counter-technologies that quickly, no defensive system in the galaxy was safe. Every species suddenly felt very vulnerable." "This is madness," whispered the delegate from the Rim worlds. "Military technology requires years of testing and refinement. Not if you're willing to test it under combat conditions," Chen said. "We had 6 months to prepare for this operation. During that time, our scientists worked around the clock developing new approaches to siege warfare." "And if your untested weapons had failed?" demanded Vexandra. Chen shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to be both casual and terrifying. "Then we would have improvised something else. That's what humans do." On the screen, General Karthak appeared beside Chen. The proud Vorthan commander looked like a being who'd just watched the universe change fundamental colors. "I have commanded this fortress for 40 years, he said slowly. "I have studied every form of assault technique known to galactic civilization. What these humans did today, it shouldn't be possible." "That's what makes it effective," Chen replied. "Every defensive strategy assumes attackers will follow logical patterns. Humans gave up on logic about the same time we figured out how to fly." Dr. Park activated a holographic display showing battle statistics. "The operation achieved complete tactical surprise because our approach fell outside all established parameters. Vorthan sensors couldn't track enemies moving through dimensions that weren't supposed to exist. You fought a 4-dimensional battle against 3-dimensional defenses," General Karthak added with something that might have been admiration. "My warriors didn't know how to aim at targets that existed in spaces their weapons couldn't reach." The Council digested this information with growing unease. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They'd proven that any defensive position could be rendered obsolete with sufficient creativity. "What do you intend to do with this technology?" asked the Etherian delegate carefully. "Use it to solve problems that conventional approaches can't handle," Chen replied. "Starting with the automated war machines awakening in the Galactic Rim." Ambassador Zethkalar's scales paled to a sickly green color. The ancient machines were exactly the kind of problem that kept the Council awake at night. Every conventional attack against them had failed catastrophically. "You're offering to help with the machine threat?" he asked. "We're offering to handle it," Chen corrected. "But we'll need operational freedom to do things our way." "Your way," Morgan repeated slowly, "appears to involve ignoring fundamental laws of physics. Only when those laws get in the way of mission objectives," Torres added helpfully. The chamber buzzed with heated discussions as representatives conferred with their governments. The humans had just demonstrated capabilities that changed everything about galactic military balance. More importantly, they'd done it with a casual confidence that suggested this was just the beginning. "Captain Chen," Zethkalar said finally, "the Council would like to formally discuss human involvement in galactic defense operations." "We'd be happy to talk," Chen replied. "But understand that we don't fight wars the way you expect. We don't follow doctrine, we don't respect impossible odds, and we definitely don't limit ourselves to strategies that make sense." "What do you limit yourselves to?" asked Vexandra. Chen's smile became something that would haunt alien nightmares for years. "Whatever works." The transmission ended, leaving the Council to contemplate a galaxy where humans could rewrite the rules of warfare faster than anyone could adapt to them. 3,000 years of military tradition had just become obsolete in 23 minutes. "Ambassador," the Corvin delegate said quietly, "we need to update our threat assessment protocols." "Update them how?" Zethkalar asked. "Mark any scenario involving humans as assume standard projections are irrelevant." The Council voted unanimously to approve the new classification. It was the fastest unanimous decision in galactic history, which seemed appropriate given the circumstances. The humans had just taught the galaxy that the most dangerous enemy wasn't the one with superior technology or numbers. It was the one that refused to accept that victory was impossible. 6 months after the 23-minute conquest of Kepler 442b, the same council chamber hosted a very different kind of meeting. The atmosphere was no longer one of casual superiority and mild amusement. Terror had a way of focusing minds wonderfully. Admiral Sarah Chen sat at the main council table, not as a supplicant seeking approval, but as an equal whose opinion could determine the survival of galactic civilization. The promotion from captain had come with a simple explanation. The galaxy needs someone who thinks impossible is just a starting point. Ambassador Zethkalar stood before displays showing the Galactic Rim, where red markers indicated the spreading plague of awakened war machines. Each marker represented a system that had fallen to automated weapons left behind by a civilization that had vanished millions of years ago. "The situation continues to deteriorate," Zethkalar reported, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance. "The machines have consumed 17 star systems in the past month. Every conventional military response has failed." The displays showed the aftermath of attempted battles. Wreckage fields where entire fleets had been systematically dismantled by enemies that fought with mathematical precision. The machines didn't just win, they converted defeated forces into additional resources for their expansion. "Tell her about the hegemony's last assault," urged Vexandra. The Altarian War Master's crystalline form had remained a subdued gray ever since the humans had redefined warfare. Zethkalar's scales darkened with shame. "The hegemony's third fleet, 300 ships including 5 dreadnoughts, engaged the machines at the Vega system. Total engagement time was 4 hours and 17 minutes. No survivors. The machines learned our tactics while we fought," added Morgan. "By the end of the battle, they were predicting our movements before we made them." Admiral Chen studied the tactical displays with the kind of intense focus that made alien observers nervous. Her staff, a mix of humans and allied species, worked quietly at portable stations they'd brought to the council chamber. "What makes the machines so effective?" Chen asked. Dr. Park, now bearing the title of Chief Military Science Advisor to the Galaxy, activated a detailed analysis. "They're perfectly logical. Every decision is based on optimal mathematical outcomes. They can't be surprised, confused, or tricked because they calculate all possible scenarios. Sounds efficient, commented Lieutenant Commander Torres, now Admiral Chen's chief tactical officer. Too efficient, replied the Etherian delegate. They've solved warfare. Every strategy we attempt, they counter with mechanical precision. It's like fighting an opponent who knows all your moves before you make them. Chen leaned back in her chair, the movement somehow managing to convey both relaxation and predatory focus. They've solved logical warfare. The distinction wasn't lost on anyone present. The last 6 months had taught the galaxy that humans didn't fight logical wars. Admiral, Seth Kalar said carefully, the Council formally requests human assistance in containing the machine threat. You mean you want us to handle it? Chen corrected. Because conventional approaches have failed completely. Yes, admitted the ambassador. We need unconventional solutions. Torres grinned, an expression that had become famous throughout the galaxy. Admiral, I believe they're asking us to do something impossible again. Are they? Chen asked the Council. Because last time you said something was impossible, we accomplished it in 23 minutes. The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered the Vorthon fortress and what human impossibility looked like in practice. The machines cannot be defeated using established military doctrine, stated Vexandra. They adapt to logical strategies too quickly. Then it's fortunate we gave up on logic centuries ago, Chen replied. She stood and walked to the displays showing machine-controlled space. Dr. Park, what do we know about machine psychology? They don't have psychology, Park answered. That's the problem. They operate on pure mathematical optimization. No fear, no anger, no confusion. None whatsoever, Chen nodded slowly. No creativity, no intuition, no ability to make decisions that don't make sense? Exactly. They're perfectly rational. Then they have a fatal weakness, Chen announced. The council chamber erupted in confused voices. Every representative demanded to know how perfect rationality could be a weakness. Machines that think logically can't fight enemies that act illogically, Chen explained. They calculate probabilities based on rational behavior. What happens when their enemies do things that have zero probability of success? Torres caught on immediately. They can't adapt to strategies that don't make mathematical sense. The machines are trying to solve an equation with variables that don't follow rules, added Dr. Park excitedly. If human tactics are truly random, the machines can't predict them. Ambassador Zethkalar gestured frantically with all 4 arms. But random tactics lead to defeat. Military success requires careful planning and logical execution. Not necessarily, Chen said. Military success requires accomplishing objectives. How you accomplish them is just details. She activated her own display, showing fleet deployment patterns that made no sense to traditional military thinking. Ships were positioned in formations that violated every principle of tactical doctrine. This is our preliminary battle plan, Chen announced. The assembled representatives stared at the display in horror. Corvin delegates clicked their mandibles nervously. The Etherian representatives' tentacles writhed with distress. Even the usually composed Altarians flashed agitated colors. Admiral, Vexandra said carefully, this deployment pattern ensures maximum casualties for minimum tactical gain. According to conventional analysis, Chen agreed. But conventional analysis assumes we're trying to fight a logical battle. What kind of battle are you trying to fight? Asked Morgan. Chen's smile became something that would give logically minded machines computational nightmares. The kind that makes absolutely no sense until it's over. Torres brought up supplementary displays showing weapon loadouts and attack vectors that violated every established principle of space warfare. We're going to fight the machines using tactics so illogical that their computers won't be able to process what we're doing. You're going to confuse them to death? The Rim World delegate asked weakly. We're going to hit them with strategies that have negative probability, Dr. Park corrected. Actions so unlikely that machine logic will reject them as impossible even while they're happening. The implications were staggering. The humans planned to weaponize their own irrationality against enemies that couldn't comprehend anything outside mathematical parameters. When do you begin this operation? Seth Kalar asked. We've already begun, Chen replied casually. The advanced scout fleets deployed 3 days ago. 3 days ago? Multiple species expressed shock simultaneously. But we only requested your assistance this morning. Torres shrugged. We started preparing the moment we heard about the machine threat. Why wait for official approval when people are dying? Besides, added Chen, asking permission takes time we don't have. It's easier to apologize afterward if we're wrong. The council struggled to process this information. The humans had committed their forces to a galactic-scale conflict without consulting anyone, based on tactics that seemed designed to guarantee failure. Admiral, said the Etherian delegate slowly, what if your illogical strategies fail? Chen turned back to the tactical displays showing machine-controlled space. Her expression carried the same confidence that had conquered an impregnable fortress in 23 minutes. Then we'll try something even more impossible, she said. That's what humans do best. Dr. Park activated a final display showing the current status of human operations. First contact with machine forces is expected in approximately 6 hours. How long do you estimate for mission completion? Asked Zethkalar. Chen considered the question with the kind of casual attention she might give to planning lunch. Hard to say. The machines think logically, so they should be easier to confuse than the Vorthans were. I'd guess maybe 40 minutes for the first system. 40 minutes to accomplish what the galaxy's greatest fleets couldn't achieve in months of conventional warfare. The council voted unanimously to give the humans complete operational authority. It was becoming a habit. As the meeting ended and representatives dispersed to watch humanity attempt another impossibility, Admiral Chen remained behind to study the machine territories. Torres joined her at the displays. Sarah, are you certain about this approach? Fighting perfect logic with perfect chaos? She looked at her oldest friend and smiled. Marcus, when has certainty ever stopped humans from doing what needed to be done? Never, he admitted. Exactly. The machines made one critical error. They assumed the galaxy would fight them rationally, and were about to prove that assumption wrong. Chen activated a comm channel to her scattered fleets. All units, this is Admiral Chen. Operation Impossible is now active. Remember, if what you're doing makes sense, you're doing it wrong. The responses that came back were enthusiastic confirmations in a dozen human languages, all expressing the same sentiment. Impossibility was just another challenge to overcome. The galaxy was about to learn, once again, that the most dangerous enemy was one that refused to accept the rules of engagement.